Hello, everybody. I'm going to be wearing my heavy-duty blue light glasses today. All right. I'm not trying to make a statement or or make a fashion statement or anything. I'm just wearing these super duper blue light filtering glasses because I spent the last 12 hours in airports flying back from the West Coast on the red eye, and it's been a lot of screen. A lot of screen, a lot of blue artificial lights everywhere, and I didn't sleep at all last night, so that is why I just feel like I need some extra TLC for my eyes today. Yeah, there's nothing like traveling and spending time in airports that will get you thinking about what I want to talk about today, which is mind control. But not just mind control, generally speaking, how it actually works. What are we talking about when we're talking about mind control? Because, the term mind control has... it's almost lost its meaning, right? These days, it's used so casually. It's almost become like a meme, right? But that doesn't mean that people really understand how it's actually functioning in life every day, right? The truth is, if you live in this world, you have been mind controlled. Okay? It's not a dramatic claim. It's just a fact. And if some part of you gets offended at the idea that, somebody would tell you that you're mind controlled, then, check yourself, because, we've got to let go of ego around this. If you don't think you're mind controlled, you're even more mind controlled than you think. And it's very humbling to realize the extent to which we've been inside these bubbles and we don't even realize it. We don't even realize it. And there's nothing to blame yourself for. This is a very sophisticated operation that we're living inside. So we'll talk about that. The only question we really have to ask when we start to inquire into mind control, how it works, and how have we been mind controlled and how are we being mind controlled currently, is to what degree are you aware of it or not aware, and are you starting to deprogram yourself? Those are really the only two questions. To what degree are you under mind control? And happy Monday. And what are you doing about it? Are you starting to deprogram yourself? All right, so I want to do this today not to, make anybody paranoid, but because, knowledge, understanding, and looking at something directly is the way to take the spell off of yourself. Right? It demystifies things. So instead of just talking about mind control generally, let's name it. Let's talk about what it is. Let's talk about how it is operating in your daily life, in my daily life. And let's not pretend that we're not being affected by something that is all pervasive. All right. So today I want to begin kind of like a map, and I'm going to elaborate on this in the coming weeks because it's such an important topic. And again, this is not to overwhelm you. It's to give you a frame of reference for where to look, for what to feel for, and how to begin reclaiming your mental, your emotional, your energetic autonomy and sovereignty. Okay, because obviously the point of mind control is to get you to stop thinking for yourself, to stop thinking critically, to take away your sovereignty so that you're easy to govern, obviously easy to control. So what is mind control really? Let's define this simply so that we can broaden our inner standing of what this is. Mind control is not just sci-fi or MK Ultra type of stories. It's not just something that is done to others. It is a global entrainment field. Okay? A global entrainment field. And if you look outside my window right now, you can see some funny looking clouds that ain't normal that are part of this global entrainment field. Now, I'm in the state of Florida, and back in July of 2025, the state of Florida outlawed geoengineering. All right, put a ban on geoengineering. Do you think that stopped what's going on? No, it didn't. Because this is not about states or countries. This is about the planet. All right, we're inside a global entrainment field that is invisible to us because we were born into it, right? Just like the fish in the water. Fish doesn't know what the water is. It's just the environment. It's just the environment that you live in. We were born inside this. So the mind control operates by shaping our beliefs, our perceptions, our behaviors, our view of ourself, without our informed consent. Often through repetition, through trauma, through stimulation, through reward. You don't have to be in a government lab to experience mind control. If you have a TV, if you went to school, if you eat grocery store food, if you scroll social media, if you live in a world that is shaped by fear and the need for permission, you're being influenced. We all have been influenced. We are all under this because we were born right into it. So the first thing to do is to see it. Okay? It's not about paranoia. It's not about, freaking out. It's not about overwhelm. It's about reality. Let's just look at the reality. Yeah, thanks. As I said right at the beginning, I'm wearing the heavy duty red glasses today because I've just been traveling and there's been a lot of blue light everywhere and my eyes feel pretty tired today and I didn't sleep. So I'm trying to give myself some TLC through these red glasses. Okay, so let's look at the spectrum of control. Okay. If you look at it as a spectrum, you'll see on the one end, there's what we call trauma-based programming, okay? And this is very intense and very obvious. And this is, some of the stuff that has been coming out now, in these Epstein files and, the things that people have been put through rituals, all kinds of trauma-based programming. And this is where they expose people to trauma that is so horrible, it's too horrible to handle. It splits the psyche, it creates compartments in the brain, and it makes a person robotic, eventually losing the ability for free thought, losing the ability for critical thinking, losing the ability to think for yourself at all, right? And that makes a person programmable, totally programmable, and like a computer in a way. So that is one end of the spectrum. And, we have all kinds of evidence that this has been going on for decades and decades. That's what they originally called MK Ultra, but MK Ultra has become kind of like an umbrella term that covers all kinds of different mind control programs. But that was maybe the original that most people are familiar with. On the other end of the spectrum, we have more subtle entrainment, emotional manipulation through various vectors, language programming that we're not even aware of, NLP, the use of NLP, like neuro-linguistic programming, gaslighting, psyops of all different kinds, right? And these are delivered to us through many different vectors. Most of us are living somewhere in between. And, if we don't recognize this, again, I want to say that it's about, let's look at reality in the face. If we don't recognize it, then we unknowingly repeat the programming and we pass it on. We pass it on to other people, to our children, to our friends. We reinforce the programming that is baked in to the system that we were born into. So let's name a few of these delivery systems that you've probably experienced. Well, number one is the media, obviously. I mean, that's a really big one, right? The news cycle. Not just the mainstream media. I mean, the mainstream media is just practically 100% propaganda for one side or another now, and it's there just to it's part of divide and conquer, right? But the alternative channels also. It's whatever is trying to get your attention with a vibration of fear. The algorithmic content loops, right? You can't scroll on Instagram without knowing that they're reading your mind for sure, right? Because you see the ads for the things that you think about, maybe the things you haven't even spoken about, or the things that you have spoken about and your phone heard you. I mean, it's getting pretty obvious, right? So through media, through social media, through advertising in media and social media. So that's a big venue that we're all familiar with, right? Because we're exposed to that every single day. And it's not just the content, it's also the harmonics. Okay, we won't talk about that today. We'll talk about that maybe next time. But it's invisible and subliminal often. Then there's school, right? School became a place for entrainment where, for example, obedience became more important than creativity. Getting the answers right and answering what we want you to answer is more important than your free thought, in many cases. And not asking the most important questions in school, right? School is really there to educate us, in other words, to bring out from within what is already there, in other words, our innate wisdom. Then why don't we ask the most important questions in school? Why isn't that the number one priority? Who are we? Where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? Right? Those are the most important questions that human beings could ever ask. And we don't talk about that stuff in school. There's also religion. Religion is a major vector for mind control. I know there are going to be people who are offended when they hear me say that. But you're being asked to worship something outside of yourself. If you're being asked to worship, to direct your energy to something else, that energy is being harvested. I'm sorry if it offends you, but we need to look at these things honestly. Food, water. I several weeks ago was speaking about the nature of food and how food has an effect on consciousness, and we're so caught up in craving based consumption. And, the food that is delivered to the stores that we're expected to eat, 90% of it when you walk into a grocery store is stuff you shouldn't eat, packaged stuff that's got chemicals in it and additives and, just stuff that isn't good for you. And all of that stuff has an effect on consciousness. It has an effect on your brain, on your ability to think clearly, to think for yourself. A lot of that is not really food. It is addictive, chemical-based, chemical entrainment, chemistry. And then there's what we call entertainment. Again, something that I think for a lot of people is becoming more and more transparent, that it's not just fun and games, right? Emotional looshing that happens when you're watching something that is terrifying or very negative, that meant to induce fear or cynicism, hopelessness, despair, anger. It's juicing you, it's squeezing you, and that is emotional looshing. It's also full of predictive programming. It's full of celebrity worship. These things shape how we see ourselves. They shape consciousness. They shape what we believe is possible for ourselves and how we respond in life. These are all vectors for influence. Vectors for influence. So again, back to what I said at the beginning, the only real question here, we're not questioning whether mind control exists. It is all pervasive planetary entrainment. The only real questions are, to what degree are you aware of this, and are you actively deprogramming yourself? Because, we can't escape what's everywhere. And it's not about escaping, running away, or being in denial. It's being able to see things clearly, to deal with reality, and then to be in the world, but not of it, right? And it is absolutely possible for us to do this. In fact, this is part of it's part of our training, like going to the gym. If you want to get stronger, you have to lift a weight. You have to have something to push against, right? And this is our weight training. This is how we are, and when I say push against, I don't mean go in resistance. I mean, see what we're up against and let that drive you back into your heart. This is not about shame, if this feels uncomfortable, that's okay. We're not to blame for the spell that we were born into. The fact that we're starting to see it now means that we're already on the path of remembrance. Can you imagine what it takes to wake up inside something that you just never could see the forest for the trees because you were born into it? I mean, that is already a remarkable achievement. This is something that I get excited about. I think, wow, all of this. And I was still able to wake up. I was still able to start to see through, right? To take back free thought, to reconnect to my heart. So this is not about shame. It is about sovereignty and about realizing that you can reclaim your perception. But you can only reclaim your perception if you are willing to see what is happening. Don't be afraid of it. Call it out. So, when we bring loving awareness to what has been operating in the background, we start dissolving it. Right? Then your mind starts seeing everywhere. You start to be alert. You start to be aware. You start to be, aha, I see how that's trying to influence me. And again, it's not about being paranoid. It's asking yourself the question, what do they want me to think and feel here? And am I going to go and do what they say? Or am I going to think for myself? Am I going to feel what I choose to feel? Am I going to allow myself to be entrained by fear and negativity and anger and get mad at other people who don't think the way that I do? Or am I going to see through that divide and conquer? And remember my true superpower as a human being, which is that I'm a full universal fractal of the source, connected to the source, self-sourced and self-sourcing. A generator, not a consumer. That I have the power of love in my heart. And that power collapses all falsehood. It's so simple. That's why there's so many distractions. As soon as you remember that, it's game over. Okay, so how does this manifest? Okay, let's come back to the practical considerations here. What are the signs that we're under mind control? Okay, well, let's say number one thing is automatic obedience to authority. All right, whether it's doctors or police or news anchors, automatic obedience and automatically believing that they must know best, that they must be right. All right, now I used to be that way, so I can speak to that. You know, I have wonderful parents and a loving family, and so, you know, my model for authority was very positive, and I transferred that model of authority onto the world. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Some people don't do that automatically. Some people question, right? So, but if you're one of those who just automatically believe that an authority figure is right, yeah, then well, question that. Automatic obedience. Well, they say I have to. Okay, well. All right, if you feel panic at breaking a rule or stepping out of line, that's definitely a sign right there, right? Oh, am I allowed to do that? Is it okay if I... Right, again, I'm coming from where I used to come from. I used to be terrified of breaking the rules or doing something wrong. I remember as a child, school crossing guard stopped me on the sidewalk, told me they were going to write a thing because I was running down the sidewalk. And I remember feeling absolutely terrified. Like I'd done something mortally wrong. Oh my goodness. 6 years old maybe. How about thinking you're bad when you rest or when you say no, right? Thinking it's somehow wrong to not be productive, to not be doing something. You feel guilty if you rest or, you know, don't do anything productive with your day, or say no when you really mean no, right? That's something to check. Reliving the same relational dramas without resolution, that's a loop, right? So if there's a cycle that keeps repeating in your life, that is a loop. That is an entrainment loop. And there's something there that is something unresolved, often a trauma or a wound, right? That's unresolved, and that those unresolved energies are very hijackable. Let's put it that way, for loops. The fear of silence, right? Do you start to kind of panic if you don't have your phone to look at, or if you don't have something to listen to? You know, are you uncomfortable with silence? Are you afraid of hunger, right? Do you panic if you don't have what you want to eat? Is there, you know, a deeply embedded fear of your own inner space and spaciousness, right? Because we've been pulled outside of ourselves and had all of our attention directed outward, so that we don't discover what's really going on in here. The good stuff, all the good stuff. And, you know, desiring external approval before acting. Do you ask a million people what they think before you make a decision? Or do you trust yourself? Can you feel your intuitive connection? I'm not saying never ask for advice or never ask for somebody's perspective. But do you feel like, I can't make a decision unless I ask other people? Right? There's a difference. Anyway, we can build on this more in the future. But I just want to remind all of us, and I include myself in this, how you can recognize the signs that you are drawn outward instead of having an inward focus and trusting your own wisdom and trusting your own knowing. And that's not from here. It's not about stuff you know, right? And information. It's about truth, which you can only perceive from inside the heart space. It's not a mental thing. All right. So I guess that's pretty obvious and I should have said it, but mind control pulls you up into your mind, right? Or it makes you operate from this space and you're checked out of this space, right? It's a diversion away from heart energy too. So this can only operate in the absence. Where did that come from? Absence. Operate. This can only operate in the absence of sovereign awareness. That's the only way that you can be, fished in by mind control vectors. The more aware you become, the more sovereign you become, the less power this stuff is going to have over you. It's going to look very obvious, very kind of cheap and transparent. So once you recognize the mechanics, you stop giving your consent to these overlays, right? And you can go about your normal life. You can exist in the world, but you have a different position, a different status in your own life. You're not running around being a beggar in your own life. The field of the mind must be reclaimed through inner authority, natural authority, right? That is innate. When you know who you are, it can be reclaimed through breath, through embodiment, through a reconnection with nature, hugely important, especially now, through learning how to feel your heart space again. And I don't mean just the emotions, right? A lot of us hesitate to go back into our heart space because of all of the sadness and the grief there, right? I'm talking about something deeper than the emotional waves that come and go. We can learn how to process that energy. That's part of how we heal. But, underneath all of that tumultuousness and the pain and the fear of the heart that has been so assaulted in this world and in life, there is a deeper root, what I call the deep heart, right? Reconnecting with that space, which is the portal, direct portal to source with no intermediary. Nobody can stand between you and that, right? That is how we reclaim the field of mind, right? Because then the mind is in service of the heart. It performs its function, but it does so, all the things that the mind does well, like analysis and breaking things apart, organizing things, looking at different parts, make comparison, right? All things that the mind does well when it does them in the service of the heart. Yeah. That's part of the reclamation. Then we have discernment over reactivity, right? Because the minute they can inflame your emotions, then you stop thinking clearly. Finally, deep self-honesty and gentleness with yourself. A lot of us say things to ourselves that we would not say to anybody else because they're so mean, right? Deep self-honesty means just telling yourself the truth about things. Telling yourself the truth about how you really feel, about what's really going on with you. And being okay with your quote-unquote failures, your foibles, your mistakes, your choices, the things you did under mind control before you knew who you were. So this attitude of total self-acceptance, of non-resistance to your light and your shadow together, is part of the reclamation of the mind, the reclamation of inner authority. When you trust yourself, there's no problem. There's still going to be challenges, but there's a new foundation, a new basis for life. Then it's much harder to exploit you. All right. So I know I'm asking this every week, but where are you still outsourcing your truth? That's a really good question to ask yourself, and it's a good thing to feel for. Where am I not trusting myself? Where do I feel like I need some external authority to validate me? And, what if your beliefs about yourself, your limitations, your struggles, even your needs were installed and could be uninstalled, right? Programming is just programming. Programming has to be installed, but it can also be uninstalled. It can be replaced with truth, which is already there. You just remove the programming and then the truth is just evident. Thank you. So I'll leave you with this today. What if some of the things you've believed your whole life were not yours? What if your failures, your anxieties, your inner critic, what if these were, all part of a narrative that was installed, not born from your true essence? Because those things are not part of your true essence. They're just not. So next time I want to talk about the delivery systems that keep this spell in place and how to start dismantling them. And until then, I just invite you to notice. There's no need to freak out. It's always been this way. Okay? This is not new. It is intensifying. The gloves are off. But it's always been this way. We were born into it. Now it's time to wake up and notice it. So, slow down, breathe, connect to your heart space. This is the space. This is where everything out there that is fake, illusory, synthetic, inverted, manipulated, it just collapses. It cannot stand when you are connected to who you really are. Observe your thoughts gently, and you can ask yourself, does this feel like me? Or is this something speaking through me? Because I guarantee you, who you really are, what you really are, is pure love and pure brilliance. Anything else is not you. Anything else is overlay. Some people are afraid to go inside because they're afraid of the, what they'll find, the worst, No, what you find is the best. What's really you. You're not here to be a subject. You are here to remember that you are a sovereign fractal of the source, and you came here with a purpose to remember and to wake up at this time. If you're listening to me and all the stuff I say, even if it's just casual passing curiosity, well, I offer you this for what it's worth. These glasses keep slipping down my nose. It's driving me crazy. I put on too much face oil trying to recover from the dehydration of the plane. All right. I'm closing this space now, and I do so in grace, not with any fear, with deep compassion for the sovereign being behind the conditioning. Me, you. May you look gently at where your mind has been shaped by forces that are not original to your nature. May you begin to notice where you've agreed to it without knowing it. And may you be very kind to yourself when you realize, don't. Consent is the true currency of all creation. So may you begin to reclaim it and just do it thought by thought, breath by breath. There's no hurry. Thanks everyone for your presence. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being willing to consider stuff that can be kind of hard to face sometimes, kind of hard to talk about too. Appreciate you. We'll talk about this more next time. Bye for now.